Today we're playing Stardew Valley, and I decided to make Farm Man, living on Farmville Farm. Favorite thing? Farming, obviously. Got to Farm Man sitting in an office job, clearly not enjoying his life. He then remembered a letter that his grandpa left for him, only to open when life gets a bit tough, as it is now. Eventually we arrive in Stardew Valley. I immediately run to the community center, hoping to find it open. However, it's locked. I then decided just to go and greet all the townsfolk, starting with Mayor Lewis, then Penny, Marnie, Vincent, and eventually Afterwards, I was on my way to go and talk to Willie, since he gives you a fishing rod. However, I remembered he isn't there on day one. I then met Gus in Pierre's shop. Eventually, I went to Pierre and bought a few potato seeds, before actually meeting the guy in person. Kind of not too nice in my opinion. Later, we're back on the farm, clearing a bit of the foliage in order to make a nice space for our future farm. I then start hoeing the ground, because obviously you need to hoe the ground before you can plant anything. I started by planting all of my parsnip seeds, however I soon realized that the farm was too small. I then decided to extend it a bit in order to add the potatoes. Then became the grueling process of watching the plants every single day. This doesn't get much easier in the future, I can promise you that. I then went on my mission to greet more of the townspeople. I met Coraline, mother of, I can't remember her name, and wife of Pierre. I then met Harvey, the local doctor. We then went and met George. He seems like a very mean guy, but he's actually very sweet. Then Gunter, he runs the museum. Marnu, Evelyn, but everyone calls her Granny, Alex, the jock of the valley, Pam, the partier of the valley will say, and then Emily. She's very friendly but a bit weird to some. We then met Sam, he's just a chill guy. Eventually we met Haley, I don't know how to put it, Demetrius, Robin's husband. And then we met my favorite character in the game, Linus. He's a sweetheart actually. They met Sebastian, the misunderstood teen. That was the end of day one. The next morning, as you can see, we started with watering the crops once again. Like I said, this is going to be a daily job unless it rains. Eventually we got the letter that we waited for. I ran straight to Willie, because I knew that I would get my first fishing rod in the game. A game-changing moment, in my opinion. It's not the best fishing rod at first, however, I immediately started fishing right next to Willie. I then went and met Abigail, that is the daughter of Coraline, the one that I couldn't remember earlier. I then went back to the farm, clearing a bit more space just to make it look a bit more, just a bit better, to make it look as if someone actually lives there. However, as you can see, there is loads of work to do. The next day I went back to the community center, however I found it was locked again. I then decided to start fishing, and I fished up a Jojo Cola, which I immediately downed. Eventually I caught my first fish in the river. It was a catfish. I then went and made my first chest, since inventory space in the early game is very limited. Again, what I did next was just clear a bit of trees, make the place look a bit better. This is a grueling process, by the way. And eventually, that was the end of the day. As you can see, it's only 4:20 PM, but I have absolutely no energy. It absolutely drains all your energy to clear the farm this early on. your tools aren't good and you don't really have a good way to increase your energy once it's depleted. So this was going to be a grueling process, but a very necessary one in my opinion. The next day, since it wasn't raining, I had to water the crops manually once again. Like I said, we're all gonna get tired of it, but it is a necessity, unfortunately. I then went fishing at the beach, seeing what I can catch there. Only a sardine this time. The next cast was actually a halibut, I think. I then donated my first piece of archaeological findings at the museum. I then went to Pierre's and bought a few more crops. I immediately went back to the farm to plant them. However, as you can see here, the beans kind of messed with my brain, since it's one of the only crops that you can't walk through. I then went back, cleared a bit more trees. I have no idea why though, since my stamina was basically empty. And then was the next day. Imani was waiting at my door with a dog that she found. She thinks it's a stray and wants me to adopt him. I then said okay, and I named him Mert. Mert will be my best friend throughout this entire playthrough. However, I won't remember him a lot. Later that day, I eventually went and I got my first harvest. I bought more parsnip seeds to replace the parsnips that I just harvested. Also bought kale seeds because why not? I then went to the mine, which was finally open, and I met Merlin, a very mysterious character. He then gave me a rusty old sword to ensure that I stay safe when I enter the mines. I immediately entered the mines just to see how it was. All I did was collect a few bits of rock. I wasn't really prepared to go any deeper at the moment. I then went back to the farm and planted the parsnips that we harvested earlier that day. You know the drill, we had to water them. And please excuse my poor Amy, it's a bit hard on the controller. Then it was the next day and I saw that one of my green bean crops had been eaten by a crow, so I decided to make 2 scarecrows. I then went back to the mine, seeing if I can get a bit deeper this time. As you can see, the mine has a lot of monsters, especially slimes and crabs this early on. However, I'm here for any quartz, any jewels, and especially iron. Here I found my very first geode. It's very nice. You can take it to Clint's, you can break it open, and you can get a very few bits of rare minerals. I then went even deeper in the mine, but as you can see, it gets quite infested the deeper you go. I eventually reached level 10, where you get your first piece of armor, leather boots. I then went back because my energy was absolutely battered. It was the next day and Clint was waiting at my door. He gave me blueprints to make a furnace. Later that day, I eventually harvested my first yield of potatoes, and then we went back to watering the rest of the crops. Eventually, heading back to the community center, Mayor Lewis was waiting outside. He eventually opened it for me, and this is absolutely amazing. This is game changing, in my opinion. The community center unlocks a lot of new things to do. As you can see, that little green guy is a Junimo. And Mayor Lewis just plays it off as being a rat, and eventually is worried about me seeing weird things. I thought that I could start with a bundle early on, but I didn't realize that I needed the forest touch. I then went back to Mayor Lewis. He introduced me to a new system where I can add a ticket in order to get a prize. However, it was his birthday, so we're seeing a lot of Mayor Lewis. I gave him a parsnip. I then went back to the farm, planted a few more potatoes, and again went back to watering them. But yeah, that was my first week on the farm. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I will be making more Stardew Valley videos. I'll probably be doing 4 weeks each season, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed. This was my very first episode, and I'll see you guys next time.